everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Two Dudes That Game. This is Two Dudes That Game review stuff. We have a new segment here. We're going to just start reviewing some things for you that pertain to gaming. And one of the things that has been highly anticipated for me over, I don't know now, 3 years, 4 years, beginning of the pandemic, which is kind of interesting for the show we're going to be getting into here. And we're going to be reviewing for you. This is going to be the Two Dudes That Game review of The Last of Us. James, are you excited about this?
I am excited. You know, it's funny. You talk about how long it's been. And, you know, Halo was a little bit underwhelming. There's always things that come and go. The hype is really big and then things are underwhelming. But this just kind of disappeared. And I don't know. It makes me wonder, not just the pandemic, they didn't stop talking about it, but I wonder if just we've been disappointed so many times that everyone's just kind of over it, right? Everyone got hyped for Sony and Uncharted, and when that was underwhelming, I mean, I still enjoyed the movie, but it was overwhelming overall. And it just kind of like, oh, here comes another one. It's probably not going to be that good. And then you started seeing the early review copy was went out to IGN, GameSpot, some of those mediums, and they were giving it 8s, 9s out of 10s. Well, it all of a sudden within a week, everyone was like, oh my God, we got to get ready. It starts Sunday.
So that I think the issue really with that was the initial backlash that the community had towards the show on the casting. So the initial casting really pissed off the hardcore, I would say, game fans that have been waiting since 2013 when it came out. They're like, I can tell you, when I finished the game in 2013, I was like, if there's not a movie on this in the next year and a half, someone has failed. Like that, it was such a good story through the game. I'm like, you're playing a movie. You are not playing a video game. It didn't feel like, with how well they did the casting, and they were kind of ahead of the curve in that storytelling because they brought in the guy that wrote the story was a screenwriter. Like he wasn't there trying to make video games. So it was very different there. And when I say it's been a long time, it's been 10 years. Like, and we've ported this game to every platform. So I've rebought it 4 times already just to play it. And we've had a second one. So we've had 2 games plus the porting of the original game, plus the DLC content that was there for the backstory of Ellie that you get. There's a gap in some of the time frames, and I won't say what the gap is, but they fill that in with some DLC content. So we've really had a long time through it, but the initial, when we found out that it was going to be the Mandalorian playing it, Pascal, and we found out that it was going to be, you know, one of my favorite characters for Game of Thrones, her name is Bella Ramsey. People were mad because they're like, this doesn't look anything like Joel and Ellie in the game. Like people
get wrapped up in that too much sometimes.
They do. But it's funny because they wanted another Game of Thrones character to play Joel, and that was Jaime Lannister. So I can't think of his actual name off the top of my head for some reason. I'm drawing a blank there, but it was the Jaime Lannister character because he does look a lot like Joel in The Last of Us. So I think that backlash kind of stifled the hype of the hardcore, and I don't think it was a well enough known like story for everybody until they announced the 2 main leads, because they didn't announce them until very late in the whole process of normally they announce their leads first, but these guys were announcing the secondary characters before that. So we've been waiting a while. The game is fantastic, so if you are a gamer, go out there and play it. It comes out on Steam, so we're getting out of that Sony exclusive world, and they're sending it out on Steam because, you know, they're actually going to try to capitalize on some of the hype they have afterwards. So it's in March that we're going to see that hit Steam. So if you want to play the game, you can go there. Just want to kind of give everyone a heads up. I will be dropping spoilers as we go along through this. If you do not want the episode spoiled, stop listening now, because we're going to review this. We're going to go over this. I'm going to point some things out that are similar to the game, that are different to the game. So if you don't want to hear that, and I hate to turn viewers away, but I don't want to hear any backlash hate in the comments of we spoiled something for you. I'm giving you that right up front.
And I
That I'm
actually
going to be talking.
haven't played
I'm
the
gonna be
game, so you're getting a perspective
Yeah.
from that side too.
I'm going to be talking about the game. Like if you haven't played it, I'm gonna be talking about the game. I can't not talk about the game. It's like if you've read the books in Game of Thrones, there's things that are different, and it's hard to review that as a fan without bringing that up. So I just want to put that as a disclaimer right here at the front, and we can get that out of the way so everyone doesn't hate me when I'm like, oh, that's not the same, or this is different, or that's different.
I hate you.
That's fine. You got to deal with it anyway. So there's nothing you can do about that. So the biggest funny part about this whole thing is this is a horror thriller show. Like it's a horror show. My wife loves those kind of shows, and she's hating me right now for bringing this up, but she is ridiculously terrified right after she watches any of these shows.
My wife is the same. Have nightmares and all that.
My wife watched the first 25 minutes of this show with like her shirt over her nose with just her eyes peeking out, with both of our 70-pound dogs just surrounding her on top of her, protecting her from everything that was going on. So you know what I did this morning? I went up to my daughter. I said, hey, Kennedy, when you're around mom, go like this and make some clicking noises with your tongue. And she walked up behind her, and all I heard is, Ender, what are you doing? Stop teaching our daughter to do that. And so all day long, my kids and my son, I taught him how to click his tongue. They've been just following her around all day, clicking their tongue.
That's awful
And terrifying. And you'll understand if you don't know what we're talking about, you'll get it as we get into this show. So James, why don't you bring us in? Because I would like to step back as the main guy going through this, since I know the story, and get your first overall feelings and feelings from the episode. Like how did you think the episode came in? Did it come in good? Did it come in hot? Are you drawn in to see what's going on?
Yeah, I will say this. It was an interesting take. I have played the prologue of the game. So
okay.
up, we'll get in as the episode goes on, but up to that point, I've played it. I tried it. It was awful. It was back when the whole PlayStation Now thing, you could play it through your TV, and I was trying to use an Xbox controller, and they don't work well. So like I couldn't turn on a flashlight. So I was like, I'm not playing this. So, but I was able to get through the beginning. Now I did find interesting, this scene goes back, to 1960 something, I think the opening.
You go to 1968.
1968. I was like, what?
None of this is in the game.
Yeah, I saw, but I was like, did we click on the right thing? And then as they started talking, I was like, okay. I mean, I understand what's going on. They're basically setting the groundwork for the virus, talking about how it's a fungus and which is different, right? They're talking about a fungus.
So,
but we've always thought it was a virus.
Well, no, it's always been a fungus.
Okay, but just in the episode, they start saying on TV, virus. Yes. But cutting back to this, you have in your head as a viewer, it's a fungus.
So I think this is interesting, and I wonder I want to know when they filmed this portion, because I'm wondering if they also put this in there a little bit to reset our minds, because we just went through this global pandemic on a virus, an influenza virus, which one of the experts there is talking about on how it transmits over planes and different, like they laid out the COVID issue that we had, but we're like, you know what? That wasn't as bad as this fungus thing that that could possibly happen here. So it was like, we just went through this pandemic. We are terrified of the whole virus issue. I mean, anyone that went through that, if they're like, oh, I was never scared, you're lying to me. We were all scared at one point when we're sitting in our homes wondering what the hell is going on outside the world. And we're just hearing, oh, hospitals are filling up. All these things are going nuts and crazy. But here they kind of set it to where it's like, oh, well, if this was a fungus, like maybe we got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
like kind of deal. Like I think so. I wonder if they put this in afterwards, or they always intended to open the show like this, because this was a great opening.
And I loved the set that they had, the ABC cameras, the ashtrays, the glass, the fact that they're smoking in studio just cracked me up, because it was like
the only thing that got me, and I couldn't keep a straight face, was its big head from Silicon Valley. Is the interviewer, and I'm just like, big head, like that's the guy you got. It's like HBO,
and he's trying to keep this
cast.
serious face the whole time.
And I'm like,
and
it's
just
big
like,
head. Come on, man, it's big head. I'm just waiting for him just to sit there and be like, that's all I'm waiting for. Sorry, that has nothing to do with it, but this opening scene was phenomenal, and there's one key line or one ending that I loved about it is no cures, they don't exist. I don't even know if it's possible. And then at the end, it's just like, well, what happens? We lose. Because they're all talking about how the influenza and the virus, well, we always win. We always adapt. We always come up with something. And then this guy ends it with, we lose. We don't figure out how to fix this. We don't figure out how to cure this. It just ends.
Yeah.
Which is very ominous moving into this story, especially because the guy that the doctor that's playing there, he's in another HBO show. Was he in Chernobyl possibly? Because it's the writer of Chernobyl helped write this as well. So I don't know, but he looked familiar to me. I think he's another HBO guy that's been on a couple of their shows. So, but I do agree. I want to know how hard it was to find those ashtrays, because I think everyone's parents or grandmother had one of those.
Let's be honest, you know exactly where they got them. They went into every old school bowling alley until they found one. That's
true. And the stage and everything just looked phenomenal there, and this intro was great. And then we cut from there into the
opening credits. Now, this is my question to you immediately. This was very Game of Thrones-esque in my opinion, but it's also from the game, from what I understand. Except in the TV show, it's in color.
It's a little different in the game. The game is black and white. It's not this 3D functioning thing. It's very flat. It's like a ink plot.
Yeah.
In the game that you get of it spreading. I do also like how it was very Game of Thrones-esque, but I think it's really cool how they made them grow into the city structures.
Yeah.
And the skyrise and all of that kind of stuff, and the way it ends with just Ellie and Joel's silhouette at the end there.
So my question to you is, will this evolve every episode?
So in the way Game of Thrones does? I'm not sure, because I don't know the liberties that they're going to take with the story, because in the story it's 20 year, so spoiler, there's a 20-year jump that you're going to get here in the first episode, but
we get two of them.
You get one jump,
then we get another jump.
No, it's only one 20-year jump.
We get two 20-year jumps through this episode.
Oh, we do get two. Yeah.
It's just funny to me how it's exactly 20 each time.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving forward through that, you get No, I'm sorry. You only get
it's like a 40.
Jump.
It's like a 35 year. It just says 2003.
Yeah, it's one.
Later we jump 20. So this time it's like 40.
So you don't jump Joel's character. You jump here. You're jumping because they're setting up this broadcast that they had about some fungus, and they're talking about the ants and how they take over their brains. And we kind of didn't get into that detail of that, but they're really talking about how this fungus burrows into your brain, controls the host, and makes the host do things that it wants while keeping it alive, because it creates penicillin basically, and continues to keep its host alive until it does the one thing that it wants to do, or the two things it wants to do: eat and spread the virus. And it spreads the virus by, we don't really know, like that's kind of thing. We know how the ant spread. It kind of grows out of the back of the ant and it hooks onto another one like that. We know that just because that's happened before, but we don't know anything about like human variations. And they do lay out a very particular thing that has to happen. The reason why the guy and they don't have names for these, but the scientist that's talking about the virus isn't concerned is because fungus can't live inside of the human body
because of the internal body temperature.
the internal body temperature. They have had no reason to adapt to warmer climates. They've been fine. So he brings up the fact of what happens if the climate temperature raises.
Starts talking about global warming, basically.
Starts talking about global warming and things like that. So now the virus, I'm going to say virus here. So I'm sorry. If I say virus, I mean fungus. Now the fungus has a reason to learn to adapt to a warmer climate, which means it can learn to adapt to a warmer internal host at that same time. So I didn't mean to skip over that because that is very key to kind of the foreshadowing of the time jumps that we're going to start making and seeing here. So we move to 2003, James. There's something significant about 2003.
It's the start of Joel's story, really.
Well, it's different than the video game. The video game starts in the launch of the game, which is 2013.
Okay.
So I think they take the liberty of scooting us back in time here. So our jump of 20 years lands us in 2023.
You okay?
So just something that if you watch the game, you'll notice this doesn't start at the same time frame that the video game starts. But honestly, not that big of a deal. Just something that's different. And you want to go ahead and get into where we get from here?
Yeah, so it goes right in 2003. You see, what's her name? I'm going to mess it up here. Sarah? Sarah. So Sarah's sleeping. She wakes up. You know, you see all these clocks. It starts with like a ticking clock, which I think is what I've heard is, if I remember the game, kind of starts that way.
So the game doesn't start here, but clocks are very important in the game in general of like if you watch through this opening, so I guess we can start here. This opening segment is not where the game starts. We're actually getting backstory of what happened in the day that we wake up on in the middle of the night.
The game started at night, didn't it?
The game starts at night. So
okay.
We're seeing the day up until we get to that actual night scene. Now, there's also a little Easter egg in here that they have. When you see Sarah wake up, just remember this butterfly that's here on her pillow. It's very interesting that they key this butterfly right here on this pillow. So I'll just leave that there as we go through and kind of mention this again where it lands a little bit further as we get into the story. Just remember that butterfly. A lot of people may have missed that, and I missed it the first time I watched it.
I probably don't understand either. So, but then she's rushing out. She's making a bunch of breakfast, and it turns out she's trying to make breakfast because it is Joel's birthday. It's her dad's birthday.
Her dad's birthday, which is the same as the game. Another little Easter egg there. He's got a poster of a guitar in his room. The guitar is very important to Joel, as we'll learn as we move forward.
Yeah, so she goes down, she makes the breakfast, she's asking for pancake mix. He doesn't like pancakes, yada yada. He gets his orange juice, vitamin C. They have a little banter back and forth, and it definitely seems like he's works a lot and he's not involved with her life as much as he would like to be, because he asks a couple questions. Did you get your homework done? It's like he doesn't seem like he doesn't care, but it seems like he just doesn't have the time to get involved in it. And so she kind of makes fun of him, laughs a little bit.
She laughs about him like caring about her schoolwork, like he has time to follow her. One thing I want to mention in this scene is the wardrobe is identical. They even made this shirt. The shirt that Sarah has on is the same shirt that Sarah has on in the game.
Oh wow.
And it's identical to it. And so is Joel's character, and his wardrobe is identical.
So they start eating breakfast, and Uncle Tommy comes in, Joel's brother comes in, and they start talking about the concrete and how they're doing a concrete job, and they need to get it poured in. And and he's looking for food, but they ate all the pancakes. So now he's annoyed. He's like, "Oh, we'll pick some
Well, they
up
didn't even have
on the road."
pancakes because he didn't pick up the pancake mix.
True.
So that's the one thing that you have here is he also forgets a lot of things because he works so much. So he's supposed to pick up pancake mix, and Tommy wanted pancakes. Again, Tommy's wardrobe identical to the video game.
Yeah.
They nailed all of this.
And then you start hearing there's some sort of disturbance going on in Jakarta. They're here on the radio, and Joel and Tommy talk about, isn't that in the Middle East? Tommy says, yes, I believe, or it's a part of Asia, and then Sarah corrects them that it's in fact the capital of Indonesia. It's like these guys don't.
So there's also something interesting there with the capital of Indonesia, going back to what the doctor had said. This would require a warm climate, a moist climate, something to force this fungus to change. So you got to think some of those areas, such as Jakarta, would be more affected as the temperature rises, and where you would see some kind of mutation in something like this.
Yeah.
If you're going to go forward. So that's kind of just pointing that out. We didn't know in the video game. We don't know anything about this. Like, oh, it started in Jakarta. It's just here.
Yeah.
Like that, just kind of how it works.
So they have a little bit of banter back and forth. They're getting ready to leave. Sarah points out that her dad's shirt is inside out, which I thought was pretty funny, which is, to me, another thing just proving that his mind is so focused on his work and his job that he just doesn't think about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So a typical, single dad overworking. Tommy just sits there and kind of laughs as Joel leaves and everybody's getting ready to leave the house for the day because they're going to take Sarah to school. We see Sarah sneak into her dad's room, which was a little inconspicuous. She stares at a knife for a little bit. She eventually finds this watch and about, I don't know, $100, but she takes about half the money, maybe a couple $100 in there. She takes about half the money, puts the rest back, takes the money in the watch, and we don't really understand why she's doing that. At least for me, because
we don't really understand why she's doing that. I did also want to say, good job for them not accidentally slipping in one of the new $20 bills, because in 2003 we didn't have them, so they were all the older $20 bills.
Yeah,
so
that's
I
good.
know. When I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, did they visit? Oh, nope, they got all the old ones in there.
So as Sarah goes outside, everybody's getting ready to get in the truck. The neighbors yell over. They've got this old grandma, I guess, in a chair. It seems very, out of sorts.
Okay.
She's not there.
Also starting to creep me out. No offense to anyone with a grandma like that, but I know this story, and this whole thing of this grandma sitting there just kind of creeps me out a little bit. The whole interaction was kind of weird.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was just kind of funny between Sarah and Joel, because the neighbors want Sarah to come over after school. They want her to spend some time with Connie, which I don't think is the grandma. I'm guessing it's I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think it's the grandma there, the name Connie they keep spitting out.
Yeah, not sure.
And Joel basically is volunteering Sarah to go. Yeah, she would love it. Yeah, it's going to be great. And Sarah tries to spin it and put it on Joel for a hot minute for, extra biscuits and everything. And then Joel throws out that he's on the Atkins diet, which
good 2003 reference.
2003 reference. I thought it's like they're just trying to make sure you as the viewer in that time period. It's like just extra things. It seems like they're throwing out there.
We also, in her room, she has a Destiny's Child poster.
Yo, you better back off
on there.
Some Destiny's
No, I'm just
Child,
saying,
okay?
like 2003, like Survivor, Destiny's Child. That was the song. So they nailed the time frame.
Yeah. And they end it with Joel saying, "We got to go, but Sarah will be by later. She'll stay as long as you want."
Yeah.
And Sarah just kind of rolls her eyes. So they get in the truck and we find out they're in Austin, Texas, September 26th.
Yep.
As they drive away. We cut to school, and while they're in school, you see one of the classmates is like shaking his hand. I don't know if that's like he's infected or...
Okay, so there's going to be something that gets pointed out as we move forward that's going to make you understand what was here. So yes, he is infected. One of the first signs of infection is
twitching,
muscle spasms and twitching. So that is you see him there with the wristband, and he's just his hands just twitching. It can't stop it from twitching, and it's shining in her eyes. That is a foreshadowing there of the fact that he is, um, you know, somewhat infected. Now, there's also a thing throughout this whole thing is reflections. So
Mm.
pay attention to stuff that's in reflection. It's very opposite of the world. So um, if you're looking at a TV screen, there might be something in the TV screen, or there might be something in a mirror, or there might be something in the watch. So reflections are a big thing in this show and in the game in general.
Yeah.
So just kind of pointing that out and to pay attention there as you watch more episodes.
So as we move along, we see Sarah leave school. School's out. She gets on a city bus. She goes into downtown. And what's funny here, I had to look this up, Ender, and it was confirmed later when I saw something else on another channel. But as soon as she gets off the bus and in town, I was like, that town looks really, really familiar. It looks like it's from Ghostbusters. And sure enough, it was the exact same town they used from Ghostbusters. Then I found out that just like in Ghostbusters, the barbershop is the only thing that they don't change in the town
so
because it
it's
fits
funny
the aesthetic.
they did an interview with the guy that owns that shop, and he's like, just keep them coming. He's like, it keeps making me money every time they put me in a film. So he's super happy about it. But yeah, it's the only thing they don't change is that one shop, because he's never changed it.
Yeah. So we go into this.
Well, they do change the owner of the shop. The guy in here is not the actual owner.
Yeah. Well, we go into the watch shop, which at first I thought was it was weird. You see all these clocks on the wall, and the way she's talking to the guy, I thought it was a pawn shop, because it seems like now she's trying to sell this watch, but turns out, because he says something about $20, and she's like, that's it? And he's like 30, and she's like 20 is good. And then I was like, oh, he's fixing it, because she went down. I actually had to stop. I was like, did she just ask for less money than he was willing to give her? But it turns out he's just trying to fix the watch. She says 20 is good. He's like, I'll fix it right now. And she's just kind of chilling in the shop. And as she's chilling in the shop, in the background, you see tons of police cars, fire trucks, everything's going by. And the shop owner's kind of like, oh, all day long it's been like this, I swear. And then I don't know if this is his wife or whoever else runs the shop with him, basically comes out and says, we're closed. She rushes Sarah out. The guy hands her the watch as she's leaving. And the lady basically says to Sarah, you need to go home right now.
Yeah, so this kind of proves that this watchmaker is very focused on his work and not the world around him, and is more upset with the fact that it's disrupting him from his work, which you've got to imagine if you have sirens and cars and things coming past you all the time, when you're trying to like be as precise as you need with the precision and hand motions you need to like build a watch, you could be very frustrated with it. One thing I do like to call out there is I do love the detail of the shop owner to have the watch face as his window covering, his blind when they pull it down. I thought that was cool.
So she rushes home, and of course she goes to the neighbor's house like she had promised. She walks in, she pets the dog. You see the grandpa there, but she does ask if everything's okay on the news, and they just are not watching. They don't care. Apparently they could care less what's on the news.
Yep.
And
yeah, well, they have the grandmother sitting in front of the TV, and you don't see her face, you just see her reflection.
Yeah. And then basically this lady, which I'm assuming is Connie that she's talking to
I think
at this
it's
point.
Connie, yeah. They never really say, she doesn't say her name.
These lines that she gives, she's like, well, no, Sarah says there's just a lot of police and stuff on the road today. And Connie says, I'm going to look it up here. Well, that's true every day. And people out there need to get right with Jesus. This was my wife's favorite line. She's like, I've never heard this. 3 nails plus 1 cross equals 4 given. I was like,
you know what? I'm just saying it's Austin, Texas. I mean,
yeah,
you know about Texas.
Yeah, I'm here in the Dallas area, so I understand.
So that's a very Texas statement. And I have heard that being from Southern Virginia.
Okay, so yeah, we had never heard that.
That made me laugh. Like, my family's from Lynchburg, Virginia, so like I don't live there now, but we're from there, and that's something that has been heard multiple times. When normally right after someone says you need to get right with God.
Yeah.
Like, it's very common sentence to say you're not following the righteousness, if you want to say.
No.
However, maybe.
So the next scene, what's funny here, Ender, is is Connie says, I think we could make some we could bake some cookies. This caused me to have to rewind and watch the next 5 minutes, because when Sarah says chocolate chip and gets all excited and Connie says raisins, I went on a rant about how that was the dumbest waste of time to make raisin cookies, and Sarah definitely had the right facial expression for this too.
I was going to point that out. I said, if anyone ever tells you they're going to make, unless they say oatmeal raisin, like I like oatmeal raisin cookies, but if they're just going to make cookie mix and replace chocolate chips with raisins, your facial expression that she has is the exact one everyone should have. Her reaction is perfect. You do not do that.
Yeah.
You do not do that. I mean, like, come on.
You don't even, Sarah wouldn't even needed to have that in the script to have that facial expression. They could have just sprung it on her.
No, not at all. And if you're making oatmeal raisin cookies, you make some chocolate chip too. Like, you always
you gotta
make
offset
chocolate
them.
chip.
You gotta offset them.
You have to. And I'm a huge fan of oatmeal raisin, man. I love me some oatmeal raisin cookies, but you always throw one of the chocolate chips in there. Come on, man. You can oatmeal raisin chocolate chip. It's great. It's a wonderful thing. But her facial expression, you didn't script that. Yeah. That is your actual facial expression to someone that tells you that.
Yeah, it was I just couldn't believe that they even bothered putting that in there. But then you see Connie over there trying to talk to the grandmother, and she comes back and says, I don't know why I tried to talk to her. She's deaf. And Sarah's looks like Sarah's doing homework. She gets up, starts wandering around. She kind of looks at the grandma, and then she goes over to this bookshelf and she starts looking through
a classic DVD collection.
Classic DVDs, and ask Miss Adler if she could borrow a movie. And I'm assuming this turns out to be pretty iconic to the game, because I didn't understand this movie at all.
The movie's a little Easter egg. People are making a bigger deal out of this than I thought it was. It's a movie that she has a conversation with another character in the second game. Like, it's not even in the first game. Now, when you learn about their relationship through Ellie, when we get into the Ellie character side of things, they watch a lot of 80s movies, and it comes up in a conversation in game 2. So it's just an Easter egg. Like, I don't think it's anything super iconic. It's a fictional movie. It's not like they just made it up for this world.
She says her dad's gonna be back soon, so she should go. And then basically Connie says, well, you're taking some cookies with you. And I feel like Sarah was trying to avoid the cookies.
Yeah.
I was like,
So you missed the most horrifying part of this whole scene.
Oh, that is true. And it was creepy as fuck. While she's looking for the DVD and looking through all the stuff, in the background, obviously Sarah doesn't see it. You see this grandma, and it's very like phased out, right? It's all blurry. It's super blurry.
It's not in focus.
But this grandmother her mouth starts twitching, her head starts spinning around, and I'm like, oh, I mean, obviously you can kind of pick up that that's the start of everything. But man, I was definitely creeped out by what was going on.
Oh yeah. And then there's another part. So as she's leaving.
Here, let me scroll through here. As she's leaving, she does go by the grandma, and the grandma looks fine again, but the dog is super freaked out.
So there's a big thing here with dogs. So in the video game, you hear a dog barking when the video, and you were actually about to get there. You hear a dog barking and things like that. Dogs are also used in the game to find people that are infected, because the dogs can smell the fungus. So the whole thing is the dogs can actually smell the fungus. So that dog knows something's wrong, which is the perfect part for me to scare my wife even more, because right at this point, our dog like runs the door and starts barking in the middle of it. It was just perfect timing from him. So anyway, the dogs are used to, as we move forward, we take the time jump to smell out people that have the virus, if they're like trying to determine whether or not to allow you in their house or home or anything.
Yeah, so Sarah goes outside, and you see fighter jets going right over top of the city, which was like, okay.
But in Arlington, that's not
in Austin, not super unusual, but it's just adding up to, you saw the fire trucks, you saw the police trucks. Obviously, as a viewer, you're seeing this like, okay, things are getting really bad. She's inside. Looks like she's reading a magazine or a book, and on the news it says No comment from the Austin Police Department. Rash of violent incidents across the city, and some are suggesting it's a new drug to blame, some sort of street drug.
Always
Of
blame
course,
the drugs
that's
first.
of course that they said. And then they say, "Hey, Manuela Sanchez is coming back with a live report later." And about that time, Joel walks in.
An hour late.
It's 10 o'clock. Joel's trying to explain to her they gave us the wrong size for the headers.
With
he
no
realizes,
cake.
Yeah, he realizes that she has no idea what he's talking about, nor does she probably care. So it's a construction issue that happened at his job. And then she's like, "Where's the cake?" And he obviously puts his head down, and she makes him swear that he's going to get a cake tomorrow. And he kind of,
the only way she's going to give her
he's
gift.
kind of hesitant. And then she says, "Unless you don't want your gift." And he's like, "Oh, you got me a gift." He gets all excited. And she makes him swear that he will bring a cake tomorrow, which he agrees to. So she hands him a gift, and it's a box. Now, from what I remember in the game, this seems to be the exact same scene.
This scene is identical.
This seems
except
like it
for
would be.
one thing.
So
One thing is different.
I know their clothing is the same. Even the necklace she has on, everything is the same. He does. Oh, and
The
I'll
couch
let you.
is the same. The broadcast is the same. There's
I'll let
only
you-
one thing that's different.
I'll let you break this down when I get to the end of this here, but he opens the box, sees the watch. She says it's fixed. He holds it up to his ear, realizes it's ticking. And then she admits to him about taking the money. She's like, "Oh, great. Well, I bought it with your money." And then she says, "Well, I'm an honest thief. I put back the change."
Yeah.
And they
first he asks, "Where'd you get the money?" And she's like, "I sell drugs, hardcore drugs."
Yeah. They
Which
made a
is
little
just
bit of
what
a
we
joke.
heard on the radio, the TV station of they think it's a new street drug. So if you think about like her putting the wittiness of her putting that line together on what they just heard. So I will point out the only thing different between this and the game is they're sitting on opposite sides of the couch.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't know if they did that on purpose.
Do you think that's to be like this is an alternate universe?
I
Like a
don't
representation,
know.
like a
I
mirrorverse
think it
type
may
deal?
be. I think it may be, but they got everything down up until she falls asleep. Identical. I mean, the lines are the same.
Oh wow.
They're right out of the movie, and except for the fact that they're sitting on different sides of the couch and they're reversed. It's opposite. So I think it has to be a nudge to that.
So she pulls out the movie she borrowed from the Adlers. He's super excited. It's its action movie. And he is like, "Oh, this is the one with the deleted scene." She's like, "Yeah, let's pop it in and watch it right now." So next thing you know, just like every female, within 5 minutes, she's probably asleep. And we cut to a certain point that she is.
You can't blame a kid for watching bad 80s action films,
Listen,
especially what that one looked like.
My wife will say, "Let's watch this show." And within 5 minutes, it doesn't matter if we started at 6 o'clock in the evening or 11 o'clock in the evening. It's the same result. Immediately asleep.
My wife was hiding underneath dogs.
Listen,
so
we
there
are
you go.
currently watching Yellowstone, and I have pretty much watched every episode 2 or 3 times because that's how many times I have to watch it for her to get through. So he puts her to bed, and then does he get this call before he puts her to bed?
No, she falls asleep on the couch and gets the call while she's on the couch.
While she's on the couch. So he gets this call from Tommy, and you find out that Tommy's in jail.
Yeah. So
he needs to
again,
get
this is
bailed
a
out.
detail you don't have from the game. That's not there. So you don't have any of that knowledge. But you do have. So we're starting to get into the game. So everything up until Joel comes home, you kind of know from the game, like the history of the game, and you get that kind of as flashbacks as you go through. It's not where you start the game, but you get it as flashbacks of what happened.
Yeah, so Tommy basically begs him to come up and get him out of jail because it's Friday. If he doesn't bail him out, he's going to be stuck there for the weekend.
And we can assume he might have been fighting someone that was infected.
Yeah, he
again,
talks about a fight in a bar where this person was going crazy. It does sound like he's referring to someone that may have been infected and that he was fighting. He doesn't, because he says, "I don't know why this person acted like this," and then I'm the one that got arrested. He's like, "It's not my fault."
Which seems like it's very typical Tommy.
Yeah, so Joel leaves, and then in the middle of the night, you see, I think it says about 2:15 or so on her alarm clock there.
Yep.
She wakes up.
This is
to
where
all
the
these,
game starts.
She wakes up to all these flashing lights, kind of going on. A lot of green light going into her room. She wakes up and she's kind of trying to understand what's going on. she realizes that Joel is gone. She doesn't know why. She turns on the TV and you get this emergency signal of some point, and then next thing you know, the dog is at the door.
Yeah. Yep.
So
you do. So from the time she gets up out of her bed until she walks and turns on the TV, that's all pretty much identical from the game. The thing I wanted to point out is how they filmed this. They filmed it from kind of the first person view that you would have of a child her size. So if you look at the camera angles, they're very low and they're all not above eye level of her, which is very much like how you move through the game in a third person game.
Yeah.
So just pointing that out. That's
the
very
other thing
cool.
I thought
visually.
yeah, I think that was really, really cool. And there'll be another more I want to talk about it here in a second because my wife brought this up. She said, "Oh, this must be just like the game." The dog, when it's panting at the door, she goes out, and as she's going to the door, you can hear the TV say, "Law enforcement say to lock up and stay inside."
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "Why are you going outside? They just told you." So she lets she immediately just kind of walks outside. She's with the dog, and she's trying to drag the dog back to her neighbors because that's where it lives. And the dog was like, "F you, lady. I'm not going." Dog runs away. She goes up to the neighbor's door, realizes it's cracked open. She walks in. She's like saying, "Connie, Miss Adler, what's going on here?" And as she turns into the kitchen, she sees all this blood on the floor. And she sees the guy, Grandpa, I guess, or the
Mr.
dad.
Adler.
Mr. Adler is against a door. And he's like, it looked like he took a shotgun or something to the chest. You're not exactly sure what's going on.
Well, I think it's a bite on his neck.
Yeah.
It's from his neck. Yeah.
So he's bleeding everywhere, and he's just like, "Help me, help me." And as Sarah's like obviously in shock, trying to understand what is happening, she hears noise. She looks over to her right and realizes that the grandmother is eating Mrs. Adler. And she lifts up, this is gross to me. She lifts up her face, and you see, I'm assuming that's the fungus. I couldn't decide if that's the hair for Mrs. Adler. That's the fungus growing in her mouth.
That's the spores of how it spreads.
So she's got this in her mouth, and she wakes up. Sarah starts running, and my God, as she runs outside, truck pulls up. It's Joel and Tommy. Joel's screaming, "Get in the truck, we gotta go." And here comes his grandma, clumsy as can be, but moving like she's in World War Z. Like, these are fast-moving zombies. I'm a big Walking Dead fan, and my wife watched a bunch of it with me, and she was like, "Oh, this is very different. Like, these are fast. But they're clumsy." At least this one seems to be very clumsy.
So it's the level of control that they have of their hosts. So we're going to start to see, like, these are brand new hosts. So they're still trying to control the body, and you have to make the assumption that the person inside is still trying to fight.
Yeah.
They don't have full control over everything because it's very early. And there's a couple of things we'll learn as we move forward about that.
So as the grandma's running towards them, Tommy and Joel are kind of yelling at each other. Tommy's not really sure what to do. He's got a gun pointed at the grandmother. And as she gets really, really close to Joel and Sarah, Joel just takes his pipe wrench and jacks her across the face and kills her. And Sarah's kind of freaked out, like, "You just killed her."
So
like, you're a bad,
Joel
almost like you're a bad man to her dad.
Yeah, I think she's seeing a side of him. And now you also had on the back of the truck where it's a Desert Storm vet.
Yeah, which is Tommy's
So we don't
truck.
know if it's Tommy's truck. So we don't know if Joel served in that war as well. So he could have not. We don't know, but
you gotta assume the first one, because we know that George Bush Jr. is president. You see that in the school.
Well, we know it's the first one,
so it's got to be
the first one. But I don't know if Joel was part of it or not. They don't define that. The other thing is here we do vary from the game a little bit. Joel does kill his neighbor, but Joel kills the adult Adler, the dad, the grandfather, not the grandmother. The grandmother is not part of it, and you never really see that. So all of that is an adaptation that I think 100% sells the show, and it is amazing that they made that change. It looks fantastic. That is, I wish I could say, based off of how they did that scene, that was going to be like the most horrifying thing you're going to see, but oh no.
No, no.
Oh no,
Here's
there's a lot more.
as they get Sarah in the truck, Tommy and Joel get back in the truck. Tommy's driving. Denise, the neighbor, comes outside and is freaking out, and Joel's yelling at her, Denise, get yourself back in the house, lock them doors, get in. Of course, neighbors are dumb. They don't listen. They start to drive away, and Mr. and Mrs. Adler are now chasing after them, and they just run them down.
Yeah, there's nothing you can really do. These infected just want to eat and infect the others. That's it.
And you hear in the background through the truck, through the back windows, you hear Denise screaming at them for what they just did. Of course, you can see them going to check on them, and immediately you kind of get the perception that the Adlers are now eating their neighbors.
Yeah. Yep. And we're seeing the spread. Like, it's spreading now.
And then, of course, as they're driving away, Sarah's trying to understand what's going on. Joel says they're saying it's some kind of a virus or parasite, and they're asking, I think she says, is it terrorist? Or he says, is it terrorist?
Which is very 2003.
Yeah.
With all the things we had just gone through.
Yeah, 9/11 and all that had just happened. So they talk about there's no cell phone, there's no radio. News people were going crazy. They wouldn't shut up, and now there's nothing. And then they're talking about it's mainly in the city, and that's why the highway's blocked off. Of course, you can see Sarah's mind spinning because she was in the city that day.
Yeah.
So I assume she's starting to freak out because she's like, what if, she starts asking all these questions. Oh, that must be how the grandma got it because they used to take her to the city all the time. And that's why Sarah's asking, how many times do you think it would take to be in the city for that to happen? Well, of course, Joel and them don't exactly know that Sarah went into the city that day, but Sarah's immediately spiraling that she may be infected too.
Yeah. And then I just want to point out from the time they get into the truck until they get into this where they're going, identical dialogue to the game, identical driving, identical road signs, identical burning building. Like, it's the game. Like, all of this is the game.
Yeah, and
you also are seeing it from that perspective.
And that perspective, that's what my wife immediately said. I think this must be exactly how it is in the game, because it wasn't your typical inside car camera view that you see in most TV shows or movies. It definitely had a lower view, which you said probably comes from her eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely had this almost first person perspective.
So in the car, depending on where you're looking, you either get first person or third person. So when you're looking up front, you see through Sarah's eyes. When you're looking in the back of the truck, you see her head, like the way they moved the camera. So that is the same camera movement that they use. Now, they added some more dialogue into it, but it is, I mean, as close to identical as you can get.
So they pull up to the highway. They see it's bumper to bumper. Tommy's freaking out. Of course, everyone had the same idea. I was thinking, you dumb. Of course everyone got the same. You think you just invented this idea to escape the city when it sounds like it's under attack? So Joel gives them some directions. They decide they're going to cut through a bunch of golf courses and fields, and they're going to get back on the road and go on the other side of what they think is a blockade. As they go through the city, they realize that they're not going to make it. They're getting cut off by the cop cars. Now, from what I understand, from what I remember, like I said, it's been about 5 or 6 years I did play this prologue. That seemed to be exactly the same way. Every time you went down a certain road, cops and stuff would show up, which forced you to go a different way.
Yeah, so this whole there's one change that they make in this. Even the left, the right, the left, the right, the movie theater getting taken out. They also homage to when you see the blue blazer come by and almost hit them. In here, they use a fire truck to block it. It was a metro car to block it. They start backing up. All of that is the same here. Chaos is running. So people are turning and everyone's going crazy. And you see this plane in the background that's about to crash.
Yeah, and they had already had a couple of planes go over pretty low, which they thought was weird. So
this plane crashes, and that's what causes the truck crash. In the game, what causes the truck crash is just another car running into them. So they changed this a little bit, but I also think this takes it back to what the scientists were saying in the beginning of it, is how it comes over on planes. So like planes are transmitting this across borders that we have. So all the
So it's like
planes
putting
coming
that
down,
in your thought
it's putting it
process.
back in your thought process, and it's also playing on the thought process that we all have here of what we just went through with a global pandemic, with how, places that shut down their airports ended up getting it last.
Yeah.
Planes were the carrier. It did any over country lines is what you're starting to see there. So that's different on how they wreck in the game. It's a car that runs into them. That blazer, that blue blazer that almost hits them, is the car that hits them, and they use the plane wreck,
the plane
to do it.
crash, like something flies through the backside.
Yeah, it's a part of the plane. I don't even know what it is that hit them, but they use that to create this wreck that they have, which in turn ends up injuring Sarah.
Yes. So
Sarah gets a broken ankle from this, and I mean, I hate when I see like broken ankles and stuff. It's just
no, I will say,
makes
yeah.
my stomach squirm.
So as they're getting out of the car, everyone's trying to see that they're okay. They realize that they're all still alive. This cop car comes out of control and runs into the back of their truck as it's upside down, and Tommy gets split on one side, and Joel and Sarah are on the other side, and Joel's yelling at Tommy, and for like, I don't know, 5 seconds, this guy is so dumb he can't even respond like, I'm okay. Like, I kept going, bro, you're standing there. Maybe just mention I'm alive. I was getting super frustrated with this scene. And then he's like, I can't get to you. And I was like, I rewound it back right when the cop car hits there. I'm like, just walk around it or climb over the truck.
I think they're trying to show it's on fire and it's like bent up to where only Joel can only go down this alleyway.
Yeah.
Again,
but Tommy could have got over to them.
So well, maybe, but in the game he can't. In the game he can't.
Yeah, because in a video game you can't walk over anything that's above your ankle. Everybody knows that's how games work.
Okay, but the cars are on fire. He can't get to them. But from this point, you have the separation. If you notice, the camera angle raises now because you've just changed characters to Joel. So now you're watching the game through Joel's eyes. And this run scene that you have here, boom, identical to the game.
And it's, again, it just cracked it. I was so frustrated with the whole this splitting up, and I'm sure that's how it is in the game. You can't get there, but he was okay with standing right up against the car that's on fire to look through a crack of flames.
We'll move past it, man. Move past it.
Listen, I'm poking holes here. Poking the bear. So I thought that was poorly executed. Could have been a bigger crash. Maybe really separate them. Put some thought into this.
Yes, because in real life, this is always how people get separated, is by
in real life, you would have climbed over that car and got with your friend.
And plane crashes and zombie attacks and cars blowing up. Okay, we'll move forward.
Well, looks like it's gonna happen soon. So like I said, they go into this first person. This run.
It's third
down
person. The whole game's third person, but the run is the same.
They run down this alley, and then they see these, I guess, zombies is what I'm going to call them. They're infected. They're eating these people on the ground, and of course, Joel's trying to be quiet. One pops his head up.
I love how he pops his head up. It is because the video game. You got to remember that, like the video game didn't come out when graphics were great, so that I have to say the way they made that guy pop up is exactly what it looks like in the video game, where he's just like, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down, I'm up. Because you don't have fluid motion.
Exactly. But it works perfect for these infected. So here goes this chase scene of the infected chasing after Joel and Sarah. And they run through this kitchen diner type place. And every door he goes through, I'm like, shut the door. I'm just screaming at the TV to shut the door.
He's holding his daughter in his arms.
You got a right leg? Kick it behind you.
Oh my, come on.
So this infected is just like, again, very clumsy like the grandmother, but he's twice as fast as the grandmother was. And he's just stronger. Like, but he can't stop and turn, so he just full bore.
I mean, again, you got this
crashes into whatever.
It doesn't know how to move this body yet. But it has taken over its host.
So I'm laughing, and of course, but you do have this tense. And again, I know what's happening in this scene because I have played the prologue, but my wife doesn't exactly know. So I'm looking at her. It's getting a little bit more intense. And as they escape from this infected at the last second, it looks like the infected is about to get them. You hear a gunshot. Of course, my wife immediately says, "Oh, that must be Tommy." And in my head, I kind of already had an idea where this is going. And you realize it's an army a soldier of some sort has
Pedro.
killed the infected, and they're like, "Where's?" She's like, "Where's Uncle Tommy?" And you can see the soldier is radioing in like, "Hey, I have 2 civilians," but
One's hurt.
he's yelling at them not to move. And they do say one's hurt. It's an ankle. And next thing you know, he kind of gets off the radio and he says, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And you could hear the voice in the soldier, very somber,
Not happy
like
with what he's hearing.
not happy with what he's hearing, but he's just trying to follow orders.
Yeah.
Which you could
You also
you could hear
have
the
Joel
internal
constantly
conflict.
saying, "We're not sick."
Yeah,
We're
Joel
not sick.
saying we're not sick, we're not sick, we're not sick. You can't even see the soldier's face because the way they've shot this with the flashlight, which from what I remember was kind of like that in the game. The
Yeah, you don't
flashlight's
see
blocking everything.
Yep.
And it looks like the soldiers, you kind of put two and two together that this soldier is about to gun them down. And sure enough, he does gun them down. He starts shooting at them, but Joel kind of dives out of the way. And then right as it happens is
Right when Tommy snipes his head off.
Tommy snipes this soldier's head off right as he's shooting, so it kind of disrupts the shooting. They fall over. Tommy looks over and asks if they're okay. Joel says yes, but you can see that he kind of grazed a wound, and he thinks like, okay, we got lucky here. But then he realizes that Sarah is not okay.
Oh.
She has been shot very badly. Joel's trying to console her. He's trying to stop the bleeding. He's basically like in denial that she's a goner. You see Tommy standing over top with a rifle, and he's begging Tommy to help his brother, and Tommy's just kind of saying, Joel.
So this is where, again, this scene is identical from the game, and you have to wonder here. And there's two things, and there's always been this theory of how long was Tommy standing there before he pulled the trigger? Because this guy shoots, and then Tommy hits him. So the question is, Tommy, we know, is a military veteran. So is he standing there watching this, just hoping this guy doesn't pull the trigger and he didn't just drop this guy right away because it's another military person, and he's there. And then when when his brother calls for him, when he's asking for his help to his brother Tommy, and he's just like, the way he says Joel is like, I've seen this wound before.
Yeah, she's
like there's no coming back from this. And it's identical from the movie, and Sarah dies in his arms. And there's one spot there where you have to look, is the watch also takes 2 shots. So the watch, you see it, and it has 2 holes in the watch that he's wearing.
Yeah, and it looks like it's like 240 something or 230 something.
That signifies, and one of the significant things about the clocks is now time has stopped. Like the infection has started, and time as we know it has stopped.
Is over. It's also marks her time of death.
Marks her death, and in pretty much the end of Joel's humanity at this point. Because he, after all of this, and being, we both have kids. And when I'm watching this, like, I'm tearing up because it's just, I put my daughter there.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing as my son. Yeah,
you cannot fathom what that he's going through. So the world stops for him because their mother left them, and he's left with her. He's trying his best. They obviously have a great relationship, and this happens on that day. And in a lot of these apocalyptic movies, getting to the military is kind of your savior point. It's normally where you're trying to get to. But in this one, we immediately recognize that the fact that they even thought, because he said she was injured, they didn't say how she was injured through them, just that she was hurt, and he got the call to wipe them out.
Yeah.
It was no questions asked. We just kill on sight. And that's it.
Yeah, it's definitely a super sad moment.
Welcome to The Last of Us.
And of course it fades to black. And this is where we get the time jump. If you want to take over here a little bit, Ender, and kind of walk us through this opening.
we get the time jump. So this opening is new. This isn't from the video game. This isn't anything you get. So you open up with this young boy or young girl. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
girl, I believe.
A girl. Okay. So we're walking in and it's I love how they go to Congress Street because we're in Boston. So he's walking to Boston here. So if you know anything about Boston, that's one of the main streets that you're gonna drive on if you're there. And he's walking up to a quarantine zone, essentially. So in the game you have quarantine. Let me stop real quick. I want to backtrack because there's one other Easter egg that I just thought of in my head. So this shirt that she's wearing,
Mm-hmm.
on the back, and I didn't pause it in the film. On the back of it is tour dates and city locations of all the places they go. Those city locations are all the places Joel and Ellie are going to go.
Mm.
So that's an Easter egg in the game. I didn't pause it in the show to look to see if it's the same. But if you watch the game and you see the back of her shirt, all of those are the cities and places you're going to go in the game. So kind of interesting little Easter egg.
And you're
there.
that's
Anyway,
something that's Sarah's shirt, or
on Sarah's shirt.
Okay.
So on Sarah's shirt, all the cities are the cities that Ellie and Joel end up having to go to at some point. And that's not a spoiler because we know they go on a trip by the end of this episode. So,
yeah.
sorry.
Now,
It just-
what I thought was interesting about this new girl walking into this city, it definitely gave me very much Walking Dead vibes of a walker walking slowly. So I immediately thought this was a zombie or an infected person.
So yeah, so that's what I thought too. I was like, huh, this is interesting. This isn't like, I don't know this part. Let's see what we're happening. So they walk up to this quarantine zone, and he finally gets to the quarantine zone, and the kid just drops. Now this officer, both of these officers are military personnel, run out there and they grab this kid and bring him inside. Now we just saw the brutality that happened before, so this is very contrasting to what we just saw.
Yeah.
Like you would assume this kid's just walking by himself. They're just going to shoot on sight like they just did, but they don't. They go out there, they bring the kid in a wheelchair,
but strapped down.
Strapped down. They're taking precautions, but so he comes in and he's holding this patch, and it's the Fedra patch. So obviously one of the officers gave him this patch to say, hey, get to like a quarantine zone or something. Like you want to get here. So he knew he had to get to it. So Fedra is the Federal Emergency Response Agency, that the Disaster and Response Agency. So that's what it is. So in this scene, so they bring the kid in the wheelchair, he's stopped down, and I want to pause it here. So everybody pause, because this is a very interesting thing on the signs that they give you here. So this goes back to what we were talking about with the kid that was in the class. Report signs of
cordyceps.
In fact, cordyceps are fungus. So cordyceps is the fungus that they have. So that's what it is. So infection. So it's a fungus infection. And all we know in the game is that it's cordyceps. We don't know like all the detail that the scientists gave us on all of that. Coughing, slurred speech, muscle spasms, and mood changes. And this is from Fedra. So the guy in class twitching was muscle spasms that they had there.
I thought the next sign wasn't interesting to me. I paused.
The next sign is very interesting. So it says if you get bit in the neck, face, or head, you by 5 to 15 minutes, your body's taken over. You're infected. Now that's why the the mother, the grand lady, and the Adlers got up so fast was because they were bit in the neck. So 5 to 15 minutes had passed at that point. So that's how quickly it can get to, this fungus can get to your brain and start controlling you there. That's really what they're saying here. The torso, arm, and shoulder is 2 to 8 hours, and the leg and the foot is 12 to 24 hours. Now, this differs from the game because in the game, it's 48 hours.
Okay.
Wherever you're bit, it doesn't matter. It takes about 48 hours. So a little bit different, but I do like how they like detailed all of this. And my question is, how did they study all of this?
Yeah.
Like it's 20 years. So you got a lot of information on it, but like this is very detailed. And you got to imagine, we jumped 20 years and it seems like no control was ever made over this thing at all. Going back to the scientists saying, there's no way to cure it. We can't find a cure. We just lose. Okay, so then we move into the little kid, and this female officer is talking to the child, and she kind of explains why they strap them down in the chairs, because they don't want him to fall out of the chair or anything like that, because he's weak and he had just fell outside. And she's being very sweet to this child. Now the child has a scrape on his knee. So this means there's a certain amount of time before he's infected that we just learned from the sign, which would give him 12 to 24 hours before he starts to be infected.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him, you know what, we're going to give you some medicine, we're going to give you some food, and we're going to give you all the toys that you want to play with until the time. But he scans the child behind his ear, and the scanner comes up red. And we don't really know what that means. But normally red's not a good thing.
Correct.
It's not normally the thing you want to see.
They don't make red and say, oh, it's good.
Yeah, and she's holding his hand and saying it's going to be okay. And the other officer gives him a shot, and she says, you're safe. That's the last thing to say when we cut to this giant bonfire.
But it's like, it is, I will say this, it is like the officer gave this kid
hope,
happiness, and it's in their last moment.
They're not, it's not this brutality that we just saw.
Yeah.
This is what I would imagine if you know there's nothing you can do to help somebody and it's a child in front of you. You're going to do everything you can to make it as comfortable as you can for them before the inevitable happens, and you're probably going to have to kill them. Like that's the world they live in today. So we have to suspend our belief of normal society right now. And it's not that hard for us because we just went through a pandemic of what could have been.
Yeah.
If COVID was deadlier than it was, and I'm not saying it wasn't deadly, but if it was dropping people a whole lot faster than it did, we'd be in a different situation right now than we are today. We may not have come out on top.
Yeah.
Or as close to on top as we got, because we lost a ton during this process. So we cut to this bonfire, and it's basically burning of all of the infected. Like, it's people picking up the infected and tossing them into these pits in order to burn them. Then we cut to a lady, a new truck rolls up with more bodies, and you can tell that she's just kind of like, are you serious? There's more of them. So this is happening all day for them. And she opens up the truck and she taps the gentleman on the shoulder next to her. And she's just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Turns out that gentleman is Joel, and the body in the back of the truck is the young girl.
Yeah, the kid that we saw from the opening scene.
So they ended up, euthanizing the child.
Well, well, that's what I thought was interesting, is that the girl freaked out and couldn't do it because it was a kid. But Joel just kind of looked at the lady and picked up the kid and dumped it over. And it was just
lost all humanity.
Soulless, like, I'm just doing it to get through my day. Like, I'm
doing a job. Like, everything, I've lost everything. This is just a job. There's nothing I can do. So I'm doing my job here. And we don't really know, like, how society works here, but we are seeing that there's a large military force and a bunch of people that are doing terrible work that don't seem to have much with the clothing and the set and everything that they're in. There's not much going on right now anymore. So we kind of move on. Joel does that, and then we get to them scooping up all the ashes, cleaning up the bonfire, and we move over to them collecting ration cards. This is identical. These cards are identical from the game. So the ration cards are how you get your food, your water, all the different things for the jobs that you do. And Joel asks this officer here of like, hey, do you have anything else today? And he's like, no, we don't have anything else today, but tomorrow we have street sweeping and sewer maintenance. And Joel asks which one pays more, and the officer's like, "Well, the one that's full of shit pays
Yeah,
more."
we all kind of saw
It's
that
like
coming, though.
we kind of knew that was coming, and he's like, "You start at 4 p.m. the next day." So Joel's just trying to get more rations. You know, he's trying to do as much work as he can to get these ration cards. We also see a curfew sign. Again, the curfew sign is identical to the game. So 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's a curfew. You got to be inside. There's nothing you can do. Now, then we cut to these gentlemen that are sitting on the street. Um, you know, they are definitely disabled. One has a crutch, looks like he's got a messed up leg. The other one's missing both of his hands. But I love that there's a Gore Lieberman
Yeah,
shirt
I
that the
love
guy is
it because it
wearing.
definitely shows that there's been no progress in there.
There's been no progress. So it's not like you're getting new clothes, things are being made. It's like things stopped. Things just stopped. You know, there's no progress here. And this is what we got. So this is what we're wearing. Then you cut to this scene, and I kind of want to kind of point this out is like they're really playing towards this fascist regime almost in the government with the Fedra, because you have this sniper that's sitting on top looking down on the city, and you're behind walls. And I thought it was a really cool shot too that they have found ways to keep electricity going.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these apocalyptic things, there's no electricity, there's no nothing. But in these cities, you have electricity. But man, those cables are everywhere. They need to do some cable. Being someone that used to be a system administrator doing server racks and stuff like that, I'm like, cable management, guys.
No,
Cable
they don't.
management.
Hey, they're just happy to
If
have
one of these
electricity.
lines goes, the amount of time it's going to take you to fix one, like, come on, this is terrible. But they're really playing on this kind of like fascist regime, and then you also see someone selling shoelaces.
And I thought that was
for one
interesting,
ration.
and that gives you a real example of what a ration is worth. Because some of those ration cards that Joel was getting, I saw like a 4 on some, a 2 on some, and you're telling me for one shoelaces it's 1 ration card, and for
You ain't getting much.
laces it's 2 ration cards. So are laces a commodity, or is this just showing you
Well, you got to
that,
think about it.
that
If
you're
you
getting...
if you don't have shoelaces, you can't keep your shoes on. If there's no one making any more shoelaces, what is it worth to you to be able to keep your shoes on? There's only so many. So like you really have to look at that of how important, you know, my dad was in the military. The most important thing he had were his socks and his boots. Like in the laces that you had to keep them on. If you had those things, you could probably figure your way out. But if you lose your boots, you lose your socks, you lose your shoes, you're walking in barefoot, man, things get hard.
Yeah.
Things get hard fast. So I think that just, again, shows how little we have here, how little things are going, and how far something as small as a shoelace that we overlook is really worth when there's nothing being produced at all. Because think about it, like, remember when we didn't have toilet paper because they couldn't produce enough?
Yeah.
Like, people went crazy.
Yeah, I learned during our own pandemic that people never wiped their ass until we had a pandemic.
No, like,
That's what happened.
I never bought extra. I never had
That's
a
what happened.
stockpile of toilet paper.
People were buying it by the crate. I'm like,
But
were you not wiping your ass before?
So here's my other thing. I also don't understand why it was such a big deal, because I could think of like many other ways to keep myself clean if I had to. Without toilet paper.
Yeah, the things that were gone during the pandemic is what was astonishing to me.
I'm not saying like every day you want to take a washcloth and wipe your ass if you had to, but you could wipe yourself and wash the washcloth again and continue. Like, to me, the toilet paper thing, I was like, I can think of a lot of other ways to get past this problem than stocking up on like 19 carts of toilet paper and people fist fighting in the parking lot.
It wasn't as dumb as people trying to fill up the back of their pickup trucks with fuel.
Oh, I saw somebody in real life fill up a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag. The dude at the gas station ran out screaming at her because she had, it was a Ziploc baggie trying to fill it up with fuel. I'm like, this is bad. I'm leaving. I didn't stay. Like, this place is burning down, and I'm getting away from this. Anyway, so from there we see the shoelaces. Then we also see this symbol that we're getting painted over. And since we do find out in this episode, I'm gonna say it's a firefly symbol. So this is the firefly. So like any fascist regime, you're gonna have uprisings that happen. You're gonna have people that resist whatever a semblance of government you're going to have, and this government is harsh. We're going to find out at this point.
Well, I mean, it's almost like they're not playing. Like
no. This is a fascist government regime. What we say goes, and we're trying to protect people, and this is how we're doing it. So then we move on to basically this just reminds me of the Hunger Games here.
It reminded me of the opening of one of the Pirates movies. I think it's 3.
Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, Hunger Games, because they do this. I remember when the uprising happens in the Hunger Games, they start hanging people. But you hear, this federal officer up there saying, violation 342.7, like, goddamn, how big is this violation book that you have? But it all comes down to they're all really getting hung for one main reason, which is leaving the quarantine zone.
Yeah.
So you basically leave the quarantine zone and come back and get caught, you're dead. We're not even going to take the chance of like
you
giving
spreading
you
an
time
infection,
to look through. You're gonna get killed. Like this is just what's gonna happen. So then we kind of move into Joel and this federal officer, where he's kind of going over there and he's paying Joel off with ration cards. You see Joel counting all the cards, and the officer does kind of say to him, or I could just shoot you. And he's like, but then what are you gonna do? So we're kind of sitting here, we have no idea what Joel's going on or what he has on this guy. We do know he came up 5 rations short, and he gives him a pile of cigarettes, which are probably worth a lot to anyone that's there. And Joel pulls out a bag full of hydrocodone to help him sleep. And there is a interesting moment here where he's like, the more people you've killed, the harder it is to sleep. And he's just like, it's just coming from Joel. So we are learning here that Joel's a smuggler.
But I also like that Joel asked for the bag back, which again goes to the whole shoelace thing. Yeah. Like, so he needs the bag because there aren't other, like, he can't just go into his drawer and pull out another bag.
So the other thing that we find out here is that each one of these Fedra places, so this is a quarantine zone here, and we see them dealing with like people in Boston, but we hear there's one in Atlanta, and the one in Atlanta makes pills and ammunition, like bullets and pills. Like that's all that this place makes. So he says he needs the bag back. Again, no one's making plastic bags. Like this is where that bag is more important to him than these hydro pills, because they're making the hydro pills. They're making these, but I'm sure they're supposed to be going to hospitals and things like that, not to drugs addict officers that they have at this point, who need them because of all the terrible things that they're doing. And you do get a sense from this guy as he's like, I don't want to do this, but what am I supposed to do? Like, there's nothing else. I could live like you, or I could live like me. He does also give Joel a warning about all the fireflies that are out there that are bombing stuff and fighting. And he tells him, stay inside, Joel. Like there's shit going down on the streets right now. It's a hot area. Basically telling him, don't make your smuggling runs. Like this is not a good time from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Because obviously Joel has to get out of the city to get these things, or someone's coming into the city to give him one, and he's going into non-quarantine areas. Then we cut away from them, and you get the Firefly slogan on the wall. One of the things that is the name of this episode, I don't think we brought it out there, of it's When You're Lost in the Dark. So when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. And if you think of a firefly is what lights up the night. And that's kind of where their name comes from. So you're seeing their slogans written all over the wall, graffiti. And then you cut from there to we meet 2 more characters. We meet Robert and we meet Tess. So I'll let you handle this one here.
Yeah, so they go right into this scene. All of a sudden you see this woman completely tied up. And I thought this was pretty interesting. And this guy has her tied up. And basically what you get from here is that this Robert guy is super upset that Tess found out, the woman that he has tied up, and he has 2 guards with him. And he doesn't know what to do with Tess because he ripped Tess off. Basically, there was some sort of battery or some sort of car battery, and I'm assuming this goes back to Joel because he has that conversation with the Fedra agent too.
Yeah, about a truck. I'm sorry, I missed that.
About a
And
truck
a car battery.
and a car
He
battery.
needs the car battery.
So he needs the car battery. So turns out this Robert guy is the one they were going to get the car battery from. So Tess is mad, or he's upset that he sold the car battery to someone else, but he took the money from Tess and all the
Yeah.
and he's like, well, I don't know what to do with you because you're going to hurt me if I let you go.
So it's actually not he's not afraid of her hurting
He's not
him.
afraid of her, but he did.
She's afraid of Joel.
Well, but at this point, you don't even know that it's Joel. He just says,
we know they're talking about a person.
Yeah,
The person becomes Joel.
He says that I'm
He's
afraid of
going
what
to find
he'll
out.
do to me. And Tess reassures him that I control him. He's not going to hurt you. And basically what you understand is that this Robert guy took their money and sold the battery to someone else and took their money. So now he's got everyone's money.
No, so Robert's a backstabbing bastard. So the difference between this and the game is it's about guns. I actually like it being about a battery better.
Okay.
Because I think it plays to the storyline. It's more grounded, and it plays more to the storyline we're going to get into of why Joel needs a car. Like, why is he talking about this truck? Like, what is he leaving for? So yeah, I do like that it's about a battery and not the guns.
So it looks like Robert is about to like let her go, and as they're contemplating and he's like kind of reluctantly being like, I'll agree, a hole gets blown into the wall.
Yeah, so basically it was you learn later that I think this was by accident, it wasn't planned, but because Tess is not part of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
But the Fireflies end up blowing up this Fedra truck right outside of where she was, and you start getting this Firefly Fedra fight on the street that Tess is now stuck in the middle of.
Yeah, now I assume that everyone had died in there except her.
No.
Because you don't see anyone else get up, right?
Yeah, but they did not die in there.
But I thought so at this point.
Yeah, at this point you would make that assumption, but they did not.
Tess is trying to get away. You see the Fedra agents. They're shooting at the sniper that I thought it was going to be the sniper we saw before, but I guess the sniper we saw before was a Fedra agent.
It was a Fedra agent.
So this is not a Fedra agent. So Tess is kind of pinned down in between in this fight. She sees more guards coming towards her. She runs to them saying, I'm not a Firefly. I'm not a Firefly. They're shooting at each other, and they just arrest her anyways.
Because what are you going to do? Like, if you really think about it, that's exactly how any police officer would react in that situation. Is if you're moving away from an explosion that just happened and they're getting shot at, they're going to put you under arrest until they can talk to you and figure out what's going on anyway.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to be soft and coy with you or anything like that. Like, we've learned that again from our pandemic of all the burnings and things that we've seen. Like, there's ways that you have to react to this. But again, she wanted to make it clear she wasn't a Firefly, because that seems like it's kill on sight. They're not going to just arrest her at that point.
So they cut away from that scene, and you see this chain. It cuts across these chains on someone's feet. It pans up, and you see it's this little girl, and she just kind of chained into this room. We're not exactly sure. So then we cut over, and we see three people walk into a room, and this little girl, all kinds of attitude, kicks her dinner tray over at them, and the lady that walked in says, I need you to count to 10 slowly. And she starts counting really fast, 1, 2, 3. And they were like, no, slowly. So she counts slowly and clearly. So she counts to 10, but as she gets to 8, instead of saying 9 and 10, she says, fuck you.
Fuck you. Yeah,
so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fuck you. She has this.
So I did want to point out that's kind of funny there. Bella Ramsey herself is British. So she has to learn an English accent in order to do this role. And she does say in many interviews, the way she learned English was through cuss words.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like,
I've heard that from a lot of them.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting because she does like to throw around the motherfuckers and fuck you and all of that in this episode.
So it's interesting here because as the lady gets done saying, she writes down whatever she writes down from the counting to 10. This character, this girl, already sticks her hand out straight forward. And as the lady looks up, she says, put your hand out. She looks up and sees that the girl has already done it. So that immediately tells me that this must be a routine that this girl has done multiple times at this point because she's annoyed with
Yeah.
the counting. She's annoyed with the. Then it says state your name slowly and clearly, and she says her name is Veronica.
Yeah. So we know this girl as Veronica right now.
The girl starts yelling, "I'm not supposed to be here." They shut the door and they just leave her.
So, but
And
you also do see half of their symbol there of when you're lost in the darkness. They don't have to follow the light on the wall. It's just when you're lost in the darkness. So it's very interesting that she's sitting on one side of the room and this is on the other side. So, is there a foreshadowing here of her being the light?
okay, I'm
of
going to
the thing?
be. Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Ender. The next about 15 minutes of this, I half-ass watched because right at the start of this next scene is when the Cincinnati Bengals returned a 99-yard fumble return. So I flipped to my phone. I started watching that nonstop. I was super excited and panicked as a Bengals fan. So I did catch where it says when you're lost in the darkness sign is up there. And then the closed captions, it said it's a girl. And then I see this lady walking out. So am I to understand that she was just trying to relay a message to a relative to let them know that they had a baby?
Yeah.
Of some
So
sort?
what happens? So what happens is you cut out away from the Veronica girl, and you go into you see this line of all these people waiting, and they're all writing messages down. And Joel walks in, and one guy's like, hey, there's a line, buddy. And Joel doesn't care. He just walks right past them and moves in. And you go in there and says, love Becca, end message, read back. So this is a communications like guy. So he's able to get messages out to other places here. So this is how they're communicating between if you have family in other places to know that. So he's a radio man.
Now, is this, am I
Um,
to understand at this point, is this a backdoor radio guy or is this public? Everyone can go in here and use this?
It seems like it's too well known, but I think it's public and everyone can use it. But it seems like they probably aren't necessarily using all of the messages in the same way. So we'll kind of get into that as well. So yes, they do have public way of transmitting the messages, and he's one of the guys that's helping them do that. But they also use a lot of the public communication because it's all that's out there in order to send messages, and that's in the game as well. There's messages everywhere in the game to find loot and things at that point. So he walks up to this guy. So interesting fun fact about this: the character that plays the radio guy is actually Tommy's voice actor in the video game. So this is where he plays in here, and I believe he cameos again in the show as another character. But this is Tommy's voice actor here. He did not come back to play Tommy. He actually passed the role on to the character to play Tommy because he felt he was a better fit for the role
adaptation.
than himself.
Yeah.
So here's where Joel is asking him, like, hey, has anything come in? Has any messages from my brother come in? So we now know that Tommy is left. He's gone west. There's no messages from him, and Joel's kind of getting upset because it seems like it's been a while. They haven't heard any messages, and it's never gone longer than a day without, and it's been 3 weeks. So the interesting part about that is he asks this guy on, like, show me on this map where the tower is. Like, where is this radio tower? And then all of a sudden the guy's like, you can't be serious. Like, you don't want to go out there. It's Wyoming. So there's this big thing of going west. And if you think about when the frontier first went, going west was just wide open spaces, tons of things. There's nothing there. It's all open country. But all of a sudden he told Joel 2 seconds, oh, Tommy's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with him. And then 2 seconds later, he's like, are you serious? You want to go out to Wyoming where your brother just went? Are you crazy? It's all open. Like, why would you want to do that? It's like, hold on. This is contradicting what you just told me. He's like, I mean, you're a capable guy, but there are worse things out there than infected. And that's where, and this is where, like, I'm not, and my wife is the same way. Movies don't scare me with monsters and supernatural things and ghosts and zombies. None of that scares me. What scares me the most is what humans are willing to do to other humans when the world breaks down. But this guy's like, look, there are raiders, there are slavers. Like, humans are worse than the thing that are going to get you. And he's like, but you're sure Tommy's okay? He's like, well, fuck. I walked into that corner. I can't really get out of it. So he
Yeah.
shows them the general area of where this Cody Tower is, which again is in the game. It's a thing that we have that he's going out to.
Why was he so reluctant to show him if he could have just showed him? I mean, he could have all the.
I don't think he was really reluctant to show him. I think he was just kind of liked Joel. I think he liked Joel's character, and Joel's a smuggler, so you got to think he's getting the people what he wants. He gave this guy cigarettes.
Yeah, so he doesn't want to lose him.
So he doesn't really want to lose Joel, who has obviously a skill set that people need here in order to get things that Fedra is not necessarily giving them. But Joel's more worried about his brother. Then the radio tower guy takes the next one, and we cut back to Joel walking into his apartment. Again, it just looks like the apartment is not been touched. He's on cinder blocks. He puts down all these maps, and yes, children, you'd have to use maps out there. So if you don't know how to read a map and all the
he has them all hidden too.
Yeah. Maps are huge. Like, maps, even in the game, finding a map was a big deal because you just don't know where to go or what road to take or what road's going to take you the right way because you're trying to cross the country at that point. And you don't have a cell tower. You don't have satellites. You don't have any of this stuff. They're all done. So you need these. He's also drinking a lot. They also focus on his watch again with the 2 bullet holes that he's still wearing. And he ends up taking some of his pills to get him to go to sleep. So Joel also is not in the greatest mental state at the moment. From that, you see Tess walk in. She gets into bed with Joel, and they go to sleep. And then you turn around with Joel waking up. So hopefully you are back to the show by now, and you can take us on through this.
Not.
Oh my goodness.
Not yet.
So
I was watching it from the side, but paying attention to my game.
So you do have this morning this instinct here, and sorry, excuse me. Joel finally sees her face because she comes in at night, and he's pissed. Kind of has the same reaction, but Joel Tess lies to him and tells him, "Hey, it was some teenagers. You know about these kids that were born after the outbreak. They just start swinging immediately. Fucking 19-year-old pieces of shit." So he's like, "It's a miracle we're all alive." He's like, "It's a miracle you're alive." And she's like, "It's a miracle we're all alive. Let's call it what it is with where we're at." So if you also don't know, this is the same actress from Fringe.
Yeah.
If you never watched the Fringe show, and I think she was highly underrated in that show. She was a phenomenal actress.
That show just came out at the wrong time.
Yeah, and she's doing a great job in this so far. Like, I do like her as the actress here, as Tess. So she tells him, "You need to take a breath. We need to do all this stuff." And she breaks the news about the guys that jumped her were with Robert, and he sold the battery. Kind of going against what she was going to say to Robert that she was going to do. Joel gets very mad. We need the battery. He's got to get to Tommy. And we know he needs the battery for the truck because he wants to drive out to where Tommy's at.
Yeah.
Tess basically tells him, "You know what? Robert's terrified of you. He wants to get that." And basically Tess was lying to Robert and is basically like, "Let's hunt that motherfucker down and get your battery back, our money back, and get the truck back."
Yeah. She was like, I did read that on the close thing because I looked up because she said, it made me laugh because I did hear the lines. I rewound it. And she says something along the lines of, "I promised Robert you wouldn't hurt him, but that's exactly what I'd like you to do."
Yeah, that's what she says. That's exactly what I would like you to do. Let's hunt that motherfucker down and get our shit back, and we'll move forward. And again, this is kind of going towards that you have this other guy that's terrified of Joel. Joel is a bad man here in this world. He's not he's not this fun-loving, nice dad that you thought he was. We didn't think he was a bad guy. He was just trying to take care of his daughter, but he's been pushed too far, and he's doing the things he has to do in order to survive. You also see him pull his gun out, so he obviously has a weapon of his own, which I'm sure he's not supposed to have, because any fascist regime is going to take away the weapons from all of its citizens around, so they cannot uprise. But Joel does have a weapon because hey, he's Joel, he's a smuggler, he's got to protect himself.
Yeah. Now, I did start watching from here. They do cut to this. They leave that scene. They cut to this lady walking into the place. You see pretty quickly it's the same area that Veronica is being held.
Yep.
And from what I understand, this character is the exact same voice actress from the game.
She is. So she is the exact character model and the exact person and the exact person that played Marlene in the video game.
So what we
She's
learn,
the only one that plays herself.
Okay, so what we learn here, she comes in and they're kind of giving her a progress report on what's going on. You learn really quickly that this is the Fireflies.
Yes.
And you find out that she's basically in charge of them in this area.
This is the Atlanta or the Boston chapter of the Fireflies, and she is the leader.
Yeah, so they're coming up with all these excuses. We need to do this, and the people aren't this. And basically, Marlene looks at them and says, "Tell them to follow fucking orders."
Yeah.
And she kind of comes up with a plan of what they're gonna do, and you don't really understand why they're limiting everything, but basically they're gonna distract Fedra because they need to get out. Like they're
So her second in command that it seems like here is like, look, what am I supposed to do with all these people? Like it seems like we're just bombing random shit. Like why are we doing this? And she points out on the map of where all the bombings were because they're the distraction from them to get away from this building that they're at there so they can move and leave this quarantine zone forever because they need to get this random girl that's locked in the West Room, as they call it. That's a thing in the game of being locked in the West Room to somewhere in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just know it's in the West. We don't really know anything beyond that because she gives her a note and she says, "Is this real?" And she's like, "I believe it is." So something about this girl, Veronica, really makes them want to keep this quiet and move her under pretty much certain death. Like if I'm not going to get killed by Fedra because I'm a Firefly, I'm going to get probably run down and eaten by these zombie things that are out there.
Yeah. Now the Marlene lady, the leader, she leaves the room and it cuts over to a scene where you see Tess is meeting with someone, looks like some sort of secret meeting. They're passing notes across looks almost like a coffee courtyard table setup. And I thought this was funny because this random guy walks up to Joel and he says, "Hey, friend." And Joel looks at him all kind of confused. And the guy's like, "Hey, don't worry. But if you're feeling lost," and Joel cuts him off and says, "You tell me to look for the light and I'll break your jaw."
So that's the voice actor of Joel.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's I think it's a Firefly recruiting at that point, and it's just like his homage. I want to say that's the voice actor of Joel. I'm pretty sure that it is.
I didn't really understand. I was kind of, again, distracted by a game at the same time here, but you learn from this meeting that they find out where Robert was taking the battery. I guess she was trying to get information about
They're
the
trying
battery.
to find Robert, like where Robert's being held up. Like, where is he? Because they need to know where he's going. And they basically find out that Robert has is held up in the same place that Miguel has held up before. So they know the location that they're going to.
Yeah. Now they're saying it's a red tagged building. Is that considered, do they assume that's a Firefly? Is red tagged mean Firefly?
I believe so, because I don't remember exactly if it's Firefly or it means it's been infected or in there.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember exactly. I need to go play the game again and remember what that is. But it either means it's a Firefly location or it's an infected location. Because I want to say they put X's on the doors or something if someone's in there.
Yeah, so they decide they need to go after this way. They say we can take the subway tunnel to get in the building from below and take Robert by surprise. So they assume he's up there, but Tess is like, they're basically like, we're going to go pay this fucker back. So it cuts away from them and we get back to this room where Veronica is adamantly trying to rip chains out of the wall. I don't know if she all of a sudden thinks she's superhuman. And then all of a sudden water starts dripping on her water starts dripping on her head where she is and she's grossed out by it. I'm assuming that's maybe a toilet
probably
draining or shower draining or something on her head. She's grossed out by it. She sits down. Door opens and she immediately starts counting 1, 2, 3, 4. She looks up and realizes it's not the same people as before, but it's Marlene.
Yep.
So Marlene comes in, the leader of the Fireflies comes in, sits down next to her. She hands her this knife. She pulls the knife, and then they kind of have this banter back and forth. Veronica's like, "Are you not scared of me?" And Marlene does not look like she's remotely scared at all. They have a little banter back and forth, and it looks like Marlene's ready to let her out of her handcuffs.
Yeah, so she does let her out of the handcuffs, and they kind of have a nice little conversation here.
So they go back and forth, and Veronica starts saying she wants to go home, and Marlene tells her, "You can't go home." Veronica's pleading, "Hey, I won't tell anyone about this." And Marlene says, "Where are you going to go? Back to Fedra Military School? You can't be that anxious to be a soldier." Which Veronica says, "Listen, I didn't choose that place. It's a place for orphans. That's where they put you." And Marlene stops her and says, "They didn't put you there. I did." I was immediately like, what the hell is going on? But I thought this banter was funny. She says, "I put you there," and then calls her Ellie.
Yeah, so she knows who she is.
I don't know. Is she giving a fake name, Veronica? Does she know her name is Ellie, or did Marlene just tell her name is actually Ellie?
Oh, no, she knows her name's Ellie. She's just giving a fake name. She knows she's important. Yeah. She knows she's important and everything at this point. And there's some things that you don't know there. And they hit there. I do like the banter where she's like, "Are you my mom or something?" And she looks at her, she's like, do I look like your mom?
And you can see the character's no. Like, no, you
do not.
And this is where we actually find out her name is Marlene. This is where she actually admits that she's the leader of the Fireflies in the Boston quarantine zone, which they refer to a lot in this show as QZ. They're going to say QZ a lot.
Yep.
And then it's funny because immediately Ellie says, "Why would a terrorist dump me with Fedra?" And it's because Marlene says it's because it's where I thought you would be safest until you decided to sneak out. And then she takes offense to the fact that they're a terrorist. And did I miss something here? Because she says, "Was Riley a terrorist?" with a question mark.
So you didn't miss something here. This is a DLC drop that I'm assuming I might spoil future episodes here. So I don't know if you want me to say what she's hinting at here, or if you don't.
I mean, I know that there was I'm assuming Marlene's the main character from the Last of Us DLC. It's like
no. Okay, Riley is part of the DLC with Ellie.
What was it called again?
I can't remember the exact name of the DLC content.
Asked you too
fast. So I don't know if this really gives away anything. Riley was the girl that was with Ellie when she got bit.
Okay, that's it left behind.
If Marlene knows Ellie, knows Riley, she knows Ellie was with Riley when Riley got bit.
Okay.
So that's all I'm going to say, because there's more in that content that I think they're going into in this series. We'll get into that.
And then basically, Ellie says, "Why won't you let me go home?" And Marlene basically just admits to her how important she is. And she says, "What I'm about to tell you cannot be repeated to anyone, because if you do, I assure that you're going to die."
Yeah. And then, she knows why.
I found this interesting. You immediately cut to Joel and Tess. They're in the subway system. They eventually get to this thing. They pan their flashlight across the subway area, and you see this what looks like a person, but they also look like a flower.
So
with vines coming out of them.
We are starting to see what happens as the fungus takes over and actually ends up killing its
host.
So here is something that the directors and the writers and everyone has said: we are adamantly not going to follow the video game on this. So what happens? We still don't know the actual cause of spread in the show. The way that this virus spreads in the game is, one, you see people get bitten. Like, we can assume that if you get bit, you turn. You have a cut, you turn.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we have there. In the game, though, what happens is it turns them into this thing, and its host dies, and it like sticks them up against the wall this way, grows out, and all of these are actually like spores that are hanging off of it that shoot into the air. And when you breathe the spores in, you are now infected. So what they said they were not going to do is have that be part of this universe, because basically Joel and Ellie have masks, like gas masks on when they're down here. And they're like, we just don't want to be putting gas masks on our main characters, trying to do the voiceovers and do all the, like, it's just a pain in the ass to have stuff. Like, look at every military movie out there where they're not wearing the helmets.
Yeah, it also makes me laugh when you talk about not putting something on the main characters' faces or mask. When one of Disney's big issues right now with Pedro Pascal is he doesn't want to wear the Mandalorian helmet all the time. So I can't imagine he was going to agree to another show where he's got a mask on half the show.
Yeah, but they had already said, like, before they casted him, we're not following this, because they're like, we are not going to do what Avatar did and CGI in every single face shield.
Yeah.
So in Avatar, all of those, if you haven't seen the new one, but they wear these masks, the shields. There's no glass in those shields. That's all CG that they put in afterwards. They're like, we're just not going to spend the money. We don't have the money to spend on doing that. We're just going to leave that out. Like so when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh, when are they going to pull out the gas masks? And like, they didn't. And I'm like in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, are Joel and Tess like already infected? Like, is this going a different way? Because they should be infected right now. There should be spores they're breathing in and being infected. And that's actually when I looked up on my phone and found out that, hey, they're not going to be going that way at all in this show. So this is basically what happens to you after the host is done with you. It puts you up against this wall and spreads the virus out. Again, I don't know, maybe if you touch it, you can get the virus or something, but that's what happens. These blooms, they called them blooms.
Gotcha.
Here's another bloomer at that point.
So they get through the end of the subway, they climb up this big ladder, and she basically says, hey, when we get through this doorway, it's going to open up into the hallway. But they get up to the doorway and they can't push it open. And she's kind of like, what, did someone put a piano in front of this? They eventually realize that there's like blood. Well, first I'll be honest with you. I thought it was like some sort of like fuel leaking in there. I don't know if it was the way the color of my TV was. And I was like, oh my God, the door's about to get blown to shit. And they push it through, and turns out it's just someone dead against it. And it is Robert.
Yeah.
So you see all these dead people, and as soon as it pans to the hallway, I'm like, wait, there where Marlene and Ellie are. And I was just confused. Like, apparently there's this entire gunfight that we just didn't get to see. They just decided not to put that in.
So actually, yes, there is an entire gunfight here that you don't get to see. This is actually not how it happens in the game at all. So what happens is Joel and Tess get to this area that they're at, and you basically have to sneak in through all of this, fight all of Robert's guys, run Robert down. There's a big gunfight with you and Robert. Robert runs out of bullets. Tess comes in and basically shoots him in the head. So like you miss that whole thing. So Robert in the game does not just die here from Marlene. You see Marlene and her group come in and she's shot. They have a fight. Now Marlene does show up and she is fighting here. So basically you have the two groups that Robert screwed coming to get him because he's trying to screw them, and they want this battery that, when you look at the battery, it's toast anyway. It doesn't work.
Tests say the battery's no good, which must be why they got into a fight with Robert's people.
Well, if a battery corrodes too much and you don't keep water inside of it long enough, the battery is going to go bad, which it definitely goes bad. And this is where you see, again, Joel's lack of like care and humanity here, because basically now we know Ellie comes out after Joel and he slams her up against the wall.
Yeah, he does not.
And has no problem pointing a gun at this child.
Now, in all fairness, she came out of the door with a knife going right for him.
But it's still Marlene. It's still a child. Like, she's still sitting there. Like, he has no sympathy for this child. He does not care that he's going to kill her. Now, there's also a thing here that I'll point it out later. Actually, we'll keep going with this.
Yeah. So Ellie does come out. Joel steps on her knife. She's pinned against. She's kind of down against the wall, and Joel and Marlene realize that that's who's there. You see Marlene shot to shit. Her other partner shot to shit. Tess comes out and is very confused on what's going on, and Tess does point out the war must be going really bad if you're trying to buy batteries from this piece of shit scumbag.
Yeah.
And they kind of have a
Yeah.
laugh like, yeah, it's not going well. Um,
Yeah.
but during this banter back and forth, uh, they're kind of arguing over what's going on, what's the state of the Fireflies, and Ellie tries to make another move at Joel, and Joel points the gun at her, and it's funny that everyone immediately put their guns up. Marlene and her crew put their guns up at Joel, and they're like, "Don't point the gun at her, point the gun at me." And Joel and Tess are just super confused, like, "What do you mean, don't point the gun at her? Point it at you?" Like,
well, yeah, I think this is where Joel's starting to they're starting to in their head realize the importance of this girl to Marlene.
yeah,
And through the whole thing, they're gonna make a deal here. So Marlene has basically just lost her entire raid crew. She's lost, all the things. She's got to get this girl out. They got to do it tonight. And I do love the one line that she has about her friend's ear. Like, you've got a hole where
you've got a hole where your
be.
ear is. You can't go.
Yeah, you can't go. Okay. Like, she's like, I'll take her. It's like, you got a fucking hole where your ear used to be. Like, you're not going. I've got a hole in my side here. Like, the rest of our friends are dead on the ground. Like, I need Joel to do what Joel does best, which is smuggle cargo.
Yeah.
And that's how they're talking about this girl. She's cargo, Joel. She's cargo. And they basically make a deal that Joel is going to take her to the state house where the Fireflies are at, hand her off, and they will get basically a Fedra repurposed truck.
Yeah, which is even better than what Joel and Tess were going to have to begin with.
Yeah, so Joel's getting a truck to take this Fedra thing there, and basically they ask, like, do you trust her? So Tess comes back and she's like, all right, we're gonna make this deal. The deal is gonna be, we get everything we want, and if we don't when we get there, we're gonna fucking kill the girl. Like hands down, there's no way around this. If we get what we want, or she dies.
Yeah.
And Marlene's just like, yeah. And Bella's like, what? So fast? Like, you didn't even think about this decision.
Yeah.
But it's like Marlene knows that there's no other decision for her to make. There's nothing else here for her to make.
Yeah, this is the best way to get it done.
Yep.
So they leave with Ellie. Yep. You know, we'll speed up here a little bit. They go across the rain. I thought that was interesting. It shows that it's storming. They get into the apartment.
The rain is very important as we get farther into the show.
Okay. So I thought this was funny. They get back to Joel's apartment and they look like they're going to walk into a bedroom, and Tess shuts the door behind Ellie, like locks her in. I'm thinking this poor girl has been locked up for like probably a week now at this point, and here she is getting locked up again. So
at least they didn't chain her, though.
They didn't chain her, but they start arguing, and of course you can hear their argument. Joel's upset that Tess is leaving, and he's going to make him babysit, and he clearly, like you said, the humanity is gone from him. He has no interest in being this babysitter for a kid. And I'm sure, I can only imagine the PTSD it's bringing back with his own daughter. Like he's not down for any of this. But in the middle of all this, Ellie is snooping around the room, finds this.
So both children are the same age. You have to realize that too.
Okay. Ellie is the same age as what Sarah was.
His daughter was. Sarah was when she passed.
So Ellie finds this book. Inside, she finds this piece of paper that says B/F. And it's got 60s, 70s, 80s. 60 stood for nothing in. 70 is new stock. And 80 has a red X.
So this is very common in the game too, where you'll find different kinds of messages. So you will walk into an area and a song will be playing, and it'll mean something if you can find the code. So basically, they're using the radios on which song they're playing in order to tell them if stuff's in stock or not in stock, like smugglers and things like that. Should Joel make a run or not? But we don't know what 80s mean. It's just
I also find it interesting, as soon as Joel walks in, he doesn't even notice that she's holding that book, which I thought was interesting. But he sits down, and her first question is, who's Bill and Frank? And I'm out of the B and F. How did she get Bill and Frank?
She heard them. That's what they said through the wall.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah. So she heard that conversation, and then she put B and F together with.
Yeah.
You gotta remember, Ellie's really smart at all of this. She's incredibly smart.
She asks if it's a code book. Basically, she points out the 60s, 70s, and then she gets the 80s. She says, "What's 80?" He closes the book, throws it down, and just like he's going to go to sleep. I'm going to pass the time by sleeping. You should figure out
Which is exactly how they do it in the game. He falls asleep. Man.
Yeah, and he says you should figure out something for yourself. And as he starts to close his eyes, she notices his watch is broken. She says, your watch is broken. And to me, this is the first time we get a real good shot of the time on that watch, which is where I remember it being around 240 something.
Yeah.
Like you can see that it's broken and it's stopped. And if you remember, if you can think back to, I think it's 241 or 240 exactly when it stopped. But remember, Sarah woke up at 2:15 a.m. So then I thought to myself, wow, all
30
that
minutes for that
was
whole
25 minutes for that entire process.
That chaos that happened.
So
yeah. So then you have Joel waking up.
Joel wakes up. She says, hey,
so stop right here. I want to go back to what I had said before. So there is a scene where Joel is getting up off of it and Ellie's sitting on the chair looking outside the window.
And there's the butterfly.
There's the butterfly. So my question here, and the thing here is, you have this rundown thing where Joel has no humanity, but who put that butterfly there? And his daughter loved butterflies that were on her pillows and things like that. So this is where I think you're starting to see a depiction of Joel recognizing this girl as, someone to take care of because of his daughter. And the butterfly is kind of that semblance to him that he might still have a softer nature here.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting that the butterfly is on the pillow that they really want you to see. And in this dreary room, why is there this sun butterfly sitting there in front of this girl? Like, she didn't make it and put it there. So he must have kept this from his daughter.
Yeah.
The butterfly is a symbol here for Joel. So to me, this proves he's still got some humanity left in him if he's going to hold on to something like that.
Yeah. Now, I found it interesting here. He's trying to learn who Ellie is a little bit. He basically says, hey, are you some bigwig's daughter? And she just says something like that. And then it's funny because she tricks him. She says, hey, the radio came on when you were sleeping. And he says, what? What was the song? And he kept saying, wake me up before you go. And then Joel he says, shit. And she says, gotcha. 80s means trouble. So it's like, I find it interesting that you're proving her smarts, like you said earlier.
Well, she's got to, she knows she has to figure out how to survive. Yeah. Ellie, the whole thing is she has to survive.
And then she says code broken, and it looks like Joel's about to rip her a new one, and that's about the time that Tess goes in.
But isn't it kind of funny though? Like Joel's about to rip her a new one, but it seems so much like what Sarah would do to him as well.
Yeah, that banter was almost exactly the same.
It's very much like the conversation he would have had with his daughter. And I think even the way she looks at him afterwards with code broken, with him being so mad, is like this little look. But again, all the framing is with the butterfly over top of her head.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Joel is seeing this from that point of view with that butterfly there, and he's holding on to it. And they're really trying to make this connection of, this is a girl, this is a young girl, Joel, this is your daughter here.
Yeah.
And he might be the only one that can help her.
Yeah. And then of course we cut out and it's nighttime. The Fedra agents are all over the place. They're guarding people and everyone. It's kind of interesting. They're talking about the curfew being in what's
so there is
one
funny thing, and I may have picked this out, no one did, where she talks about like Lancaster backpacks. Again, everything stopped in 2003. Everyone had that kind of backpack then. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting that, again, nothing has been made. There's no new backpacks. There's no nothing.
So you see Joel and Ellie and Tess come out from this, looks like blacktop that they've split, like some sort of road.
I can you that I would never make it in a post-apocalyptic scenario because I am way too fucking claustrophobic to have to go through all these tunnels and holes and shit that you have to get around.
I'd be fine.
It's not happening.
I'd be okay.
No, I wouldn't.
I bet my asthma would probably kill me, but
yeah, it's like you ain't breathing once you get out of there.
But I find it interesting.
It almost looks like a hole they dug. It doesn't even. They just dug a hole.
So Joel and Tess immediately get behind cover. You see the lights coming from all kinds of guard towers. But Ellie's just so excited to be outside. She's kind of like, oh, wow, I'm outside.
So I do want to point out something. So as they're driving by, as they pass where they pop out, you do have the guards out there because there's a curfew. And I want to hint at, I want to be very specific as what they say is the curfew has been mandated. Everyone must be inside to fight infection and insurrection.
Yeah.
So we're already saying here, this isn't necessarily completely to fight the infection. A little bit, this is the fight the Fireflies, insurrection, anyone trying to rule over us at that point here in these quarantine zones.
So it kind of cuts through. They're sneaking through. And as they get to what looks to be around maybe their last corner they got to go, they see this guard just taking a leak against the side of the building. And in my mind, I was immediately like, oh, they're going to go over there and kill him. Like, I just would assume that's what you would do, right? Because if you get caught, you're dead. No, they decide they're going to try to sneak by. And as they do that, the guard catches them. And
so the problem in the game, though, is if you drop a body, you immediately start a search party. So like if they drop a body there and someone comes searching and looking for them and they do a roll call and they try to think, they'll know they've left.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's the whole thing about dropping bodies is not a good thing. You want to get past everything without it because you don't want these guys hunting you down. You don't want them coming after you because they will. So that's why they don't really want to drop a body.
So the guard gets his pants pulled up and he's got his gun pointed at them, the whole flashlight thing that we saw earlier in the episode. And he realizes that it's Joel and he says, "You got to be kidding me." And Joel's like, hey, hold on. And the guard seems like he's just super distraught and upset because he's like, "What did I tell you? I told you not to come out there." At this point, I'm just like, I don't understand why this guy doesn't just let him go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure here. That's kind of where I'm at with it too. Like, I'm not sure why he wouldn't just let him go, but I think it's him, it's Tess, it's there. They're really locked down. They just got hit in this fight, and Tess is with him. Like, he's like, I can't. I have to turn you in here. So the guy decides that he wants to turn him in. Now in the game, it's 2 guards.
Okay,
it's not 1.
So he gets them all on their knees, and he brings out that scanner that we saw earlier in the episode. Of course, he scans them, and it shows that they don't have, I guess, a permit or they're not registered to leave. So I guess
no. The scanner tells them whether. So that, remember the girl that got scanned in the beginning?
No, I understand that, but after he scans the first one, he does say
it tells them if they're infected or not.
But he does say something about you not. So I thought maybe it gave you more information.
No,
because he says we're going to do this. We're going to do everything by the book.
Yeah, he's going to arrest you. He's going to scan you. He's going to make sure you're not infected because you're outside the wall right now. So the whole thing is they've walked outside the wall. They're trying to get him to stop them from doing this by giving him half off, full off, all the different things in their new run. But the scanner is designed to say, are you infected? Like, I have to arrest you and scan you.
Yeah.
And Ellie knows when he scans her, he's going to know that she's infected, but didn't turn.
Okay.
Which we don't know until right now.
Yeah. See, but he doesn't say anything about being unauthorized exit until he scans Tess the first time. So maybe he's just saying you have an unauthorized exit, and that's what he's saying you're going to be hung for.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. That's the whole point. But to follow the rules, he's got to scan them first. Because if he scans them and they're infected, he's got to drop them right there.
But as he goes to scan Ellie, she gets that knife swing on that she wasn't unsuccessful with Joel Hunt, gets him right in the side of the leg. Everyone starts kind of screaming. He gets the gun back up, and Joel puts himself in between Ellie and the guard, and he's saying, "Hey, we can fix this. We can fix this." And all of a sudden, he has a flashback of the moment that he's there. You see Sarah and the yellow light of the guard back then where he's holding Sarah. And instead of just standing there and not making a decision, he decides to charge this guard, gets underneath him. The gunshot goes up. Everyone's okay, but Joel beats the living shit out of this guy.
This is a Sir Christian Cole moment here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This was one of those ones where I'm like, did he watch that episode of House of the Dragon when Cole decides to beat the crap out of the dude?
It also reminiscent. I don't know if you're a big Walking Dead fan, but Rick Grimes does a very similar thing where he protects his son. He gets another guy and he just punches him until he kills him.
Yeah, and then so what ends up happening is Tess pulls up the scanner. sees that. Well, there's two things here that kind of happen. So one, Ellie's watching this, and I can't tell if she's happy that he's defending her, sad, or she just doesn't know what to do with the rage. And this is proving again, Joel is willing to do anything, even to destroy and dismantle and kill a person he even knows.
Yeah.
Without really remorse or thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously he thought about it a little bit here because he had that flashback, but you got to, like, it is reminding you of how broken Joel really is to just destroy this guy the way he did, that he knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tess sees the scanner, sees that Ellie is technically infected by the scanner. Ellie's like, I'm not sick. Look at my arm. It's 3 weeks old. Like, this is 3 weeks. And we know if she got bit in the arm from the sign that we had earlier, that she should have turned within 2 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
And now we know why the lady was asking her to count and do all those other things, because they were checking, like, is she really hasn't turned? Like, is this true? Is it not taking over at that point?
So next thing you see, Tess is like, we got to go. They're going to catch us if we don't run. Joel's kind of like in this bewilderment state. Of course, he just killed somebody and he's trying to process, wait, she's infected. Is she not infected? Picks up his stuff. They start to run away. And they crawl to this fence. It shows like a biological area.
Yeah. So they are crossing into basically the hazard zone. That, you know, they're going out. They're going deep.
Mm-hmm.
They're going west. They're no longer in quarantine zone. So you don't necessarily know what they're going to run into out there. But we do have a couple more things before the end, because we're right at the end of this.
So the last thing, it cuts to back to Joel's apartment and the radio cuts on, which is something that we saw in the trailer. Mm-hmm. And what song is playing there?
So it's Never Let Me Down by Depeche Mode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an 80s song.
Which means
trouble. But it's very interesting that they picked this song, because the lyrics of this song are, I'm taking a ride with my best friend. I hope he never lets me down again. He knows when he's taking me where I want to be. I'm taking a ride with my best friend. So if you really think about this whole thing, it's like now Joel is taking Ellie to where she needs to be, but I hope he doesn't let me down again. Could be a line back to, did he let Sarah down by not acting when that guard was going to shoot?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. A very, very good song to pick right here for that, with it being with those lyrics. So I thought, and maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it seems like it's very much. I don't feel like they would do it by accident.
Song. So
yeah,
I agree with you on that.
From there, we
get a shot of the city as the episode's panning out. You get a shot of the city. It's completely stormy, dark, and you see the two towers like leaning into each other. I thought that was pretty interesting.
So did you see the one thing there? Did you miss one thing on the left? On the left, on top of the building, there is a clicker.
On the top tower?
On the building in front of it, there's a clicker on the top of the tower. When the lightning strikes, you can see it, and it's what makes that growling noise that you hear.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I didn't.
So there's a little clicker on top of it that you can see up there.
I'm looking at it on my computer now. Now I see it. Yeah, I wouldn't have seen that with the lighting and the way this episode.
So you're seeing the twin skyscrapers, which is an iconic location in the game. It's one of the things that you see and you know where you're going. So that is episode 1. That is episode 1. They went a way into episode 1. We got a lot of little drops in there. We got a lot of Easter eggs that we had in there, and I'm hoping we continue to see those through. So I do apologize that these are going to be a lot longer episodes in here, because they do have the video game aspect. And this was an hour and a half long episode. This is probably one of the longest ones that we'll
Yeah, I'm
have.
sure.
So that is When You're Lost in the Dark, episode 1 of The Last of Us. James, I think I was right on our trailer when I said I think we got a banger here.
We definitely got a banger. I think that they've nailed the
opening. I don't know how they're
opening.
going to ruin it, but I don't think they can if starting off this
No,
good.
they started out strong. Like I said, those review scores are great. I think they're great hope for what's to come, and I just hope that people really buy into this show. I would hate for just people not to be interested. But I think it's got drama. I think it's got the right cast. You know, we're gonna see Nick Offerman's character, I think, in the next episode.
Yeah, you're gonna find a Bill. You're gonna see Bill.
So I think that's gonna be a huge boost of fans coming over. You know, that might not have typically watched something like this. It might draw them in, and they get sucked into something they didn't know that they wanted to watch from the beginning. So I think it's the perfect timing for this show. You're not competing. You know, The Walking Dead is in a transition right now, so that genre, those people that love that are looking for something a little bit different pace. I think this is perfect for that. It definitely is perfect for me. And of course, I'm sure you've got the video game crowd always, but just like we talked about the Halo show, you know, the video game crowd gets very upset that the Halo show is different. But the trick to these shows being successful, it's not about the video game crowd. It's about the casual crowd that doesn't care about the video game.
Those are the video games now are only worried about the casual crowd. You know that.
Yeah, well, but you know what I'm saying. Like that is a wider audience, and I think that they've nailed it. But like you said, the writing from this game was by people that weren't in the game industry necessarily.
Well, so the other thing there is they have the lead developer working on this project. They have the main writer working on this project with them. So they're not going to steer far away from the story without the adaptations being something that the writers of the original story and the developers of the original story probably go back and look at and be like, man, I wish we had done this a little bit more.
Yeah.
I wish we had a little bit more detail. Like the beginning of this episode, to me, would have been phenomenal if we had it in the game, because we're just kind of thrown into the game. We don't have that background, but it's like we have a second chance to do this.
Yeah.
Let's fill in some gaps. Let's fill in some story and plot holes that we had in the game. And I also think a game like this transitions easier to film than like Halo does.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because Halo, again, it's a first person shooter that multiplayer was the biggest thing around. This is a storyline game, single player game that's all about the story. You know, it's almost less about the gameplay than it is about the story at this point. So
Absolutely.
you have an epic story to follow. Then you're trying to make the story along in Halo, because like we all know, we're just trying to destroy the next Halo. Let's go shoot some aliens and the Covenant, and you have to kind of create that story as you go along to make it interesting. Where here, if they didn't change a damn thing and just followed the script exactly, you would still probably have one of the best shows on television right now.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think everything that they modified enhanced the show. It was things that I wanted to know or questions that I had in my head. So anyway, it's been a long episode. Thank you for hanging in there with us. I'm Ender. Guy sitting over here next to me is James. This is Two Dudes That Game. Review some stuff and things about games. We got to come up with a better title for that, but I think it's just going to be Two Dudes That Review Stuff, or it's just going to be the review stuff segment of Two Dudes That Game. If you want to find us, please check us out at thelastchoicenetwork.com. You can find us on YouTube under The Last Choice Network. You can also find us here shortly at twodudesthatgame.com. If you're just interested in the Two Dudes That Game side of things, we'll have those up there. May just link you to our YouTube page in the beginning, but I'm hoping to have some more things up there for you guys. Maybe get a little merch drop. Maybe a little merch drop for Two Dudes That Game if you want to buy some awesome.
We got a new logo coming soon.
We do have a new logo. I'm working on it now, and we're gonna have I think pretty soon we're also gonna have some very specific Two Dudes That Game intro music that's designed just for us, and also probably some new cover art and things like that. As James and I realize and know, we've been doing all this stuff on our own, so it's time to bring in some people that actually know what they're doing when it comes to art and design and all of those pieces as we grow. But we're hoping to get that stuff out to you. I think we've got a great show here. I know my wife is hating the fact that she wants to continue to watch it. She also said, and if you're out there and you love this genre and you want to get the understanding of the story, just listen to us. And you don't have to watch it, because that's what my wife said. I said, she was like, "Are you and James going to do this show?" I'm like, "Of course we're going to do this show." She's
Yeah,
like,
we have to.
"Great, that solves my problem. I'll just listen to you guys and I don't have to watch the show." I'm like, "No, I'm going to make you watch the show because it's funny. And I like to torment you when I can." So anyway, if you don't want to watch the show because you don't like to be scared at night about the clicking noises that you're going to learn about here pretty shortly, I would assume, listen to us. We will give you the breakdown of everything. Thank you. Have a good night, day, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Please tune back in to Two Dudes That Game. Subscribe, like, do all those things at the bottom. We really appreciate it. Please keep giving us comments. You guys are doing great. I love waking up in the morning and coming in and seeing those comments to respond to. We will respond to pretty much any comment that anyone puts down. Between the two of us, we try to get to all of them. Thank you very much. I'm out.
Later,
Later.
guys.